Welcome to the Scott Holland podcast back here on a Wednesday night where I think Bobby quite literally there's one loss out of like almost a half dozen sports that we're going to talk about tonight. It was a very successful week that was for Houston Cougar sports. A very positive week, though. Obviously, challenges still remain ahead. You don't win any championships based on a nice little regular season week of February, but makes it nice to talk about, Bobby. Dustin is currently under the weather, not joining us, so it's just you and I tonight. How are you doing, my friend?
Good, man. Good. Weather was 80 degrees today in Dallas. So I went out, played around the golf, and now I'm ready to podcast. So let's do the thing.
Not bad. For the video consumers here, no, I'm not recording in a pitch black room. I'm not doing the podcast equivalent of those restaurants where it's pitch darkness and you just like, basically, I'm not doing sensory deprivation podcast. I discovered upon getting home about 15 minutes ago from work that for some reason the webcam on my fairly new laptop is not working. So I asked Bobby his preference. Bobby preferred this blank black square for my non-working webcam as opposed to the little like non-video thing. So that's what we're doing. Sorry you don't get to see my beautiful face. I figured at least for the people watching, I owed you some explanation here, of course, here at the top. But gotta mention housekeeping, of course. Please, please, please do follow our friends at the 1012 Network, at TN12 Network, wherever you social media, talking all things Big 12 over there. 500th 1012 podcast episode coming up here this Sunday, Bobby. One or multiple of us may be joining Philip and company there to talk all things Big 12 over there. Of course, great Big 12 sister podcast as well. So also going to mention patreon.com/SH podcast, where don't know if I'm breaking news here, Bobby, but you and I talked about this. We're going to be doing not just our usual regular pod. We'll still be talking about obviously the Cougar basketball postseason here on the regular feed, but we're going to be doing a conference tournament and NCAA tournament immediate recap episodes for those of you who are wonderful and generous enough to support us financially. So that's patreon.com/SH podcast if you don't do so already. And if you do, you're a fantastic person. We all three of you, even absent Dustin, really, really appreciate you. Of course, got to talk about our friends at Charlie Hustle, charliehustle.com on the World Wide Web. I'm not going to say that Dustin and I wearing the new red Houston Cougar Charlie Hustle Cougar basketball shirt is what prompted the Cougars to just beat the stuffing out of the Longhorns on Saturday, Bobby, but I'm not saying that. And
Right. It didn't hurt. It
didn't
certainly
hurt.
didn't hurt.
Didn't hurt that Dustin and I, 2,000 or so miles apart, were channeling that positive Charlie Hustle energy towards a Cougar win. If you want a comfortable shirt, if you want to look good with a vintage Cougar design, really great collection top to bottom, shirts, crew necks, and hoodies. Just a recent, I just posted about it on our Twitter account here in the last couple of days, a Charlie Hustle Cougar basketball hoodie release as well, adding just an absolutely fantastic collection. Of course, please use our promo code SHP15, SHP15. That's going to save you 15%, not on your first order, but on any Charlie Hustle order. Vintage made fresh, as our good friends in Kansas City like to say, and some cool stuff coming here in the future without tipping my hand too much of what the Charlie Hustle folks are doing. So that's charliehustle.com. Support our friends, get some good Cougar gear, and look good doing it. I think nowhere else we could start, Bobby, but Houston Cougar men's basketball, a really awesome 2-0 week, beating a top 10 opponent and also beating an opponent to, I think, I don't want to speak for every Cougar fan. We all come from different backgrounds. We all have different opinions, but I don't think in terms of an opponent that this fan base wanted to see, kick the butt of, that there's anyone higher than the Longhorns, the program in Austin, the burnt orange school that we're constantly told is the flagship of the university. I mean, no matter how well the Longhorns are or aren't doing it, for what it's worth, they're still basically in everyone's bracket projections as of recording. Getting a win where the Cougs just unambiguously kicked their butt and never trailed, Bobby, oh man, it's kind of what we dreamed would happen once we were for sure that the Longhorns would be forced to play at least one game at the Fertitta Center. There have been better wins against better opponents this season. There was a better win against a better opponent on Monday night.
A couple of days later.
A couple days later. We hope, I think, a number of big wins in a row coming in a certain postseason event that spans from mid-March to early April. But I think we all as Cougar fans should really just enjoy everything about that win. The great crowd, the performance, all of it. It was a just really wonderful Saturday to be a Houston Cougar.
Absolutely, man. The amount of pride that filled my heart when I saw the Fertitta Center as packed as it was.
Yep.
And loud and borderline obnoxious in a great way. Um, I can talk about the game and all of that, and obviously that made me very excited. But just seeing, I think I say this to Dustin every time I'm back in Fertitta. I went to a game last year. I went to a game this year, and I went to TSU last year. I went to Jackson State this year. So not big, huge games or anything
Man,
like
just love
that.
seeing
But
us play
yeah,
HBCUs.
yeah, I'm big fan, big fan. Um, and that, all jokes aside, that's kind of how the calendar works out with traveling down there and stuff. But it's just like I always walk in and I sit there and I see the LEDs on the court, coming down the projection onto the court, and the crowd's going crazy, even though it is just Jackson State and TSU. And I just I look at Dustin and I just go, this used to be Hofheinz. Like, this was Hofheinz Pavilion, and we've turned it into this, and it's like a formidable place to play. We were talking to good friend of the pod, artist of the pod as well, Bill. I was talking to him last night, and he was just like, I haven't been in there since and heard it like that since '08 when we played Memphis, when Memphis was number one in the
I was
country.
gonna guess that one or Kentucky because those
Yeah.
were both legit atmospheres,
Yes,
man.
yes. And so it's just to just see that, man, and like we don't lose there, right? Knock on wood, I may have just jinxed us, but at any point in your fandom since '07, up until Kelvin got here, until Samson got here, Hofheinz was not a scary place to play, man. Like, we weren't consistently beating teams at Hofheinz. They talk about home court gets a certain amount of an advantage, a certain amount of points. We didn't do that, man. And now you don't come into Fertitta Center. If you win at Fertitta Center, you have done more than you could possibly imagine. It's like getting 3 wins. And to see the students, just the students are going crazy. I remember, I see a lot of people on Twitter like, oh, back when I was watching, there was only 100 of us or 50 students. Dude, I have pictures where there are 6 of us at a game. And just to see it
I'm in some of those.
happen.
I know, man.
Yeah, there's 6 of us. And just to see it and then not just to do it for the Texas game, to do it for the Iowa State game. Sam, the idea of a basketball game versus Iowa State on a Monday being beyond sold out, SRO, loud and crazy, I would have never imagined. Ever. I would have never imagined it. Yet here we are. It's crazy. So much fun.
Yeah, I want to give the fan base credit. This is 2 Saturday early-ish tip Big 12 home games in the last month or so, K-State and this one.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously it's going to always be a different energy and ferocity for the Horns. But I thought in both cases, maybe a little bit less to K-State, but understandable. It's an unranked, not going to be an NCAA tournament level K-State team. And I thought in both cases the crowd was there early and loud, and both games ended up being 20-plus point wins where the Cougars never trailed or were in any doubt of winning this game.
Yep.
The point in this one where I thought the Cougs really put their foot in the gas, because I mean, give the Longhorns credit, they didn't immediately roll over into a ball. It took about 10 minutes to do so. Tyrese Hunter hits a 3 to tie the game at 17. I think that was actually Hunter's last made field goal of the game. Just inside of 11 minutes, game's tied at 17. From there, Bobby, U of H goes on a 14-3 run. And that doesn't meet that criteria of a, kill shot run, which is kind of like a 10 plus to nothing run.
Yeah.
But after that point, the Horns were never really back in this game. It was like single digits for a moment near the end of the first half, but by the time the clock hit zeros, the Cougs had a 13-point lead and would only extend that a lot further for the remaining half of basketballs. I don't think you could say enough about the performances of LJ Cryer and Jamal Shed in this one. And in terms of both guys' offensive performance, and really the way the whole guard group, if you want to throw in Emmanuel Sharp and Malik Wilson and Ramon Walker Jr. there as well, to keep Max Asmus and Tyrese Hunter from making any kind of impact in this game, really impressive stuff. And my hope really after the game in Austin, after Asmus scored 20 points when these teams first met, was we could just split the difference between that performance and the last time he was at the Fertitta Center when he went 1 of 13 when he was playing with Oral Roberts. And Bobby, I went back and rewatched this as well. Out of the 2 shots that Asmus made in 14 attempts on Saturday, One was like a three as the shot clock expired, followed by a really fucking dubious foul call on Emmanuel Sharp, and then a make and transition right at the beginning of the second half. Like, just could not have impacted the game less as the guy who's kind of been the Longhorns'
Mhm.
leading scorer. And Jamal Shed should get the most credit there. I mean, from my vantage point, he got the most of A. Smith and was clearly making his goal to not give him a moment's peace whenever the Horns had the ball. But I mean, again, I got to give credit to Sharp and Cryer, who I think have both been a big part of, for the season, one of the country's truly elite guard groups. I mean, A. Smith and Hunter Bobby on Saturday, 4 of 23 from the field. And anytime you do that to any opponent's best two guards, it's probably gonna be a good night for you. And again, also another guy after he was a really positive difference maker the first time these teams met in Austin, Dylan Mitchell, basically invisible on Saturday. I
Mhm.
remember after that first game thinking to myself, if he could do this against us, how is he not doing this on a more consistent basis for the season? And not surprisingly, Kelvin Sampson and this team didn't allow that to happen twice. And can't say enough about LJ Cryer. So you and I have texted about this one. LJ Cryer's performance. Like, what a, you've been a little bit critical of him, and I think rightfully so, because I really do think you look at the numbers, his offensive output has not been on the same level as it was his last year at Baylor, though I think he's contributing a lot of other different ways. But how about that game from LJ Cryer, man?
Just insanity, man. Just insanity. The kind of thing you need from LJ Cryer. If this team's going to make a deep run in the NCAA tournament, you need more of these games from LJ Cryer than you do some of his games that we've seen from LJ Cryer. If LJ Cryer plays like this in March, I have a hard time seeing this team lose. If they lose, it's
Yep.
because somebody else didn't have their normal game, right? If you get this out of LJ Cryer, where, maybe you go up against Zach Edey and his size and talent kind of takes over. But if LJ Cryer's putting up 26, something's gonna end poorly for the other team typically. Just to kind of add on to kind of some of the things you said, this game finished a 19-point game. I mean, or a 21-point game. I'm sorry, and it didn't even feel like it was that close. Like it didn't even feel like it was a 21-point game. It felt it. I got ready for work almost the entire second half. I had it on and was listening, but at no point was I worried about this game. Like you said, after that little run that we went on, you know what I mean? And so it for me, the big key in the game was clearly turnovers and points off turnovers. When you look at the turnover spread, it was only 6, right? We only went 14-8, but points off turnovers were 19-4, which is pretty big, man. That's huge in a game versus a team like Texas. And like you said, shout out to Jamal Shed, absolutely locking up Avis. Held him to 7 points, 4 assists. LJ Cryer, what else can we add on top of 26 points? Not only that, 26 points, gets a rebound in there as well. 9 of 13 shooting, 6 of 9 from beyond the arc. Yeah, can't ask for much more than that.
Just a crazy, like, just so much activity on that Jamal Shed line. Like, the guy
Yeah,
was insanely involved. Like, 11 rebounds, 6 assists, 2 blocks, 6 steals, 3,003 turnovers as well. Like Jamal Shed
yeah.
was doing it all, nearly all of it.
Oh, and
Really
just 16
positive.
points on top of it.
Just 16 points, no big deal.
Mhm.
I really liked also at the very beginning. So you went to Wani Roberts and Javier Francis early. It wasn't either guy's best game, but I think it was I think it was a good tone setter there. My personal favorite sequence from this one, I think you'll know this one. Early second half, Wani Roberts has a really nice step back move to bank a shot in.
Mhm.
Does the flex after getting the foul on Dylan Dessou. I would go so far as to say almost Olajuwon-esque, and I'm not somebody who likes to make that comparison, but it was really nice footwork. And then next trip down, gets back to Sue for an easy layup and hits him with the universal sign for too small. And
Yep.
Rodney Terry calls a timeout. Just an absolute dream sequence. Really fantastic that this also gives the Cougs a 2-game lead in the all-time series. Not that, I mean, you couldn't see them in the Big 12 tournament later this season or in the NCAAs, or I guess like in one of those multi-team feast week events around Thanksgiving. Like, I don't think the Longhorns pettiness is such that if we both ended up in the Maui Invitational, that they'd be like, no, we're withdrawing. I think think that would probably be overstating a bit, but very good chance that we don't see this team head to head for a very long time, and to have a 2-game lead in that is pretty fantastic.
Yeah, and here's the other thing. We're good at where they don't want to avoid us anymore. Right? It used to be, why would we play U of H? If we beat them, we don't get any credit for it. If we lose to them, we lose a ton. Man, now we're good. We're almost at the, why would we play the Longhorns? If we beat them, what good does it add to our resume? But it's kind of flipped. So like, I don't know if we wanted to play them, not that I think that they would be like jumping at the chance to play us, but in basketball, I could see them being like, "Oh, y'all want to play us? Yeah, we'll do." Not to say that their egos won't get the best of them, and they'll want some kind of 2-for-1 or something like that. But yeah, I think it will absolutely. I couldn't see them specifically trying to avoid us all the time.
Yeah, I shouldn't have this much of a focus on this head-to-head series, but I just thought that was like the little
Yeah.
cherry on top. Last note, I think adding the perfection of the game, Ian Eagle and Bill Raftery on the call. Obviously, I think my dream TV combo is Raff and Jim Nance, but I think it just added to my enjoyment of the beatdown that a TV crew I liked a lot called this one. It's probably like a March Madness association too. That I just associate those guys
Right.
with March Madness, but really enjoyed that as well. Just could not think of anything about this basketball game that I did not enjoy. It was a beatdown, and not to praise this opponent too much that I just don't want to praise, but did against a team that will almost certainly be in the field of 68.
Yeah.
Like it's not like you just took apart some team that's going to be in the NIT or something like that. You took apart a team that is probably going to be in the postseason among the best, 68 teams in the country, which I think
Yep.
really impressive performance there.
I agree.
All right, let's talk about that Monday night game. What a win over the Cyclones. I think, like many have pointed out, a really strong parallel to when these teams first played up in Ames back in January. I mean, I guess if you want to look for differences, I think U of H had a better chance to win that first game later on than Iowa State ever did in this one. But I mean, no 2 games out there are really truly identical. And not that U of H didn't get pushed or that I really ever felt super comfortable this would be a Cougar win until about that last media timeout in the second half. I mean, this is also the first time this year that Iowa State has not had a lead of any kind in a game this year. There's something to be said for doing what the Cougars have done this year and running as many teams out of the building as they've done. But there's also something to be said for facing a really, really good opponent like Iowa State, who keeps punching you back every time you look like you might be putting this one on ice and still finding a way to win the game, you know?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was a game that had some points of concern in it, but really this felt like one of those games. And I don't know if I told you about this game, but maybe it was our game versus Kansas, where it just felt like one of those games where the team that was leading, luckily for us, it was the Cougs, but where you kind of jump out to a lead. The parallels to their home game are quite comical, actually. But jump out to the lead, and then the opponent will cut it down to 4. And then you come down, you get a big bucket. And then it's back at 7. And then they come down and they go on a small little run to cut it to 3, 4, maybe 5, something like that. And then you stretch it back out to 11. And then they kind of cut it down. You kind of let them get close, but never close enough. That was how this game felt for me throughout the entire game.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, and if this is a team that's gonna be playing games deep in March, like I think we all hope, it's gonna be against opponents like Iowa State, teams who are
Mm-hmm.
top 10 or top 20 caliber, tough as nails, that even if they aren't exactly style wise like the Cyclones, an opponent that doesn't have a lot of obvious weaknesses. It felt like an NCAA game in late February, not to keep
Yeah.
going back to the well of boxing metaphors, but it was 2 really high level teams that felt like they were landing haymakers constantly. I mean, this is an opponent, Bobby, that had lost once in the last month, and it was by 2 points at Baylor, where they literally missed hitting the game winner by fractions of a second.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many different ways I could say it. A really good basketball team. If they don't fall off a cliff, good chance it's Iowa State's best regular season this century. And credit to the Cougs. I don't think I expected the 17-4 run out of the gates to start the game. I also wasn't surprised when Iowa State got back in it, cut it to 5 by halftime, and like the game with the Longhorns. I liked that the Cougs went out there trying to get Wani and Javier involved in the opening possessions. and I thought did a really good job. The Cougs did attacking Iowa State's no middle defense, though. I thought, like you pointed out to me, Iowa State adjusted, gave the Cougs some zone looks that hopefully the Cougs maybe did the best against. And I really thought that kind of slide in the first half and Iowa State being able to get their way back in it. It's a nice, if you're a Cyclone fan, combination of them changing up those defensive looks. Wani getting 2 fouls, I think, hurt a lot as well. A reminder how even though we talk a lot about the guards with this offense, and those guys are generally the high scorers, that if you don't have Wani out there for an extended period of time, it really changes what you can and can't do. He's such a critical player to this team. You were good at reminding me just how good this guy is, not to overlook how good and just what a pivotal cornerstone player he's been for this program these past several seasons.
Yeah, you can tell a lot of how the game's going to go just based on not Wani's production, not, is he scoring? Is he doing this? But just, are they kind of focusing Wani early, right? A lot of times you'll see us come out and we try to establish where our guards do not drive our offensive performance early in the game. It's usually a pass down to Wani in the block. Wani does a couple of things and he'll hit that nice little hook shot that he's developed this year. And if it goes in, great. If it doesn't, as long as he gets that shot out, typically that's it's like that kind of gets the offense flowing, right? It reminds me a lot of in a big football game when you kind of come out and you see a couple of little screen passes, quick hitters. You just kind of want to get them into the flow of the game, get your quarterback into the flow of the game. That kind of feels like how our offense is the first 2 or 3 possessions when we dump it down into Wani. And to my surprise, teams aren't defending that, right? You would think almost every game you watch of U of H on the tape, they're going to start with Wani, and they're just not defending it. And so we keep going. And if Wani makes the first 2, it opens up the offense because people start to bring extra help over to Wani's side. And now the ball can start moving to our guards who can just absolutely light it up from deep.
It's almost like they would rather give that up than leave LJ Cryer, Jamal Shed, or Emmanuel Sharp with anything approaching a decent look to start the game. But yeah, I mean, like you, I kind of wonder why more teams are just like, yeah, they're going to go these guys early. And that's kind of a tone setter. Like you said, the game really was the first time an opponent came into our arena this year in the halftime deficit wasn't U of H up by a fairly comfortable margin. And I'm not a true believer in momentum, but it really did feel like Iowa State left the floor after that first half of the team with more momentum. Right out of the half, Iowa State cuts the lead to 3. Thankfully, never got any closer than that. But right after the first media timeout, I thought U of H was on the verge of really pulling away. The lead was up to 11 at one point. Iowa State cuts it right back to 4. U of H gets the lead back to 7. And that was kind of just how the second half went generally. Iowa State would have an answer every time. The Cougs looked to be on the verge of putting the game out of reach, but never enough answers that I think really that at any point, not that I wasn't sweating it a little bit until the last few minutes, but it was never just like, oh man, we really might lose this. They really have gotten momentum with this game. The Cougars were kind of able to put them at that arm's reach, which I think is good. That's a skill you need to have if you expect to be playing and winning meaningful games in March, because it's chances are if you go past the first round or two, it's going to be, like I said, at the top against an opponent like Iowa State. And once the Cyclones started fouling Jamal Shed, I think we all knew we had this one in the bag. It's kind of funny. This team is, by any definition, a bad free throw shooting team. And yet I was just so confident when they were sending, kind of trying to extend the game and send Jamal Shed to the line that he's going to go up there and he's going to hit big threes. And the same would be true if it was Emmanuel Sharp was the guy that they were doing that to, or LJ Cryer was the guy they were doing that to. It's kind of a funny contrast between me being like, yeah, this team is, I don't know exactly what it is right now, 310th in the country in free throw percentage. Yeah, I'm just so confident that those 3 guys, if it's a, foul to extend the game situation, that it's not going to work for this opponent. Just allowed Jamal Shed to do some stat padding. And for that, we truly do appreciate TJ Otzelberger and the Iowa State staff. But man, it was just so satisfying, even if it wasn't the blowout that a lot of these home games have been, to see the Cougs walk off the court having outplayed a legitimate top 10 team. Like, we knew they were coming in at 6, but it's one thing to know that, kind of maybe watch a few of their games and do the scouting stuff, but to actually like watch 40 minutes of Iowa State and be like, yeah, that's a top 10 basketball team. That is a, a really good team. And you were able to get out there and beat them on the court. Can't say enough about Jamal Shead again. I think might be obscured by the fact that, oh yeah, no biggie had 26 points in this game. I think if possible had an even better defensive game on Monday
It
night.
was amazing.
So active.
I, you know, not to kind of jump over you
No, nah, man.
and
I was
kind
leaving
of
the door
talk over
open.
you,
Jump
but
in, jump in.
man, Jamal Shed, we've had this conversation outside of the pod, and that conversation is this may be Samson's best, most well equipped for March team that he's had. I think there have been teams that maybe had more talent on the roster, um, had better players, but not necessarily guys who were better for March than this. And the reason is because of Jamal Shed. When you need something, if you need a stop, Jamal Shed's going to make sure that you get that stop. If Iowa State pulls within 3, Jamal Shed, even though he's not necessarily known as a big time scorer, right? If you're talking about scores on this team, you're going to talk Sharp, you're going to talk Cryer, you're going to talk other people. He can do it. But if you need a 3 or you need a big bucket to keep you in the game or something like that, it's going to come from Jamal Shed. And there's no doubt every time you come in. And that's what makes this team different in terms of the ability in March. I think this team, you need a guy like that, especially at the guard position, who you can just count on. This guy's just going to come down and hit a bucket for us.
Yeah. I think his development offensively it's been kind of incredible. Not that he was ever, once he became a lineup regular 2 seasons ago, ever a bad offensive player, but I don't know if I think we just kind of assume that guards, even forwards now who play under Kelvin Sampson, will get some amount of better between the start of their career and the end of their college career in this program. But I think Jamal Show is already starting at a pretty good place. He came in, because that going to 2 seasons ago, they were kind of going to do a thing where Marcus Sasser was both like the lead scorer and ball handler. Jamal Shed was going to play a decent amount, but Jamal Shed wasn't anointed the guy from day one. And then, Marcus Sasser goes down hurt, Tremont Mark goes down hurt. And it's just like, all right, buddy, you're the point guard. Like, we have no
Yeah.
choice.
Yep.
He had already been we'd already started seeing some really good Shed and Sasser lineups to relitigate 2 years ago season, but like, he got kind of thrown in the fire at that point. And I think it's just, we're blessed, fortunate, whatever you want to call it, to have had the last 9 seasons of point guards here to go from a Galen Robinson, like foundational guy, like the Godfather, the culture guy of the early Samson years, to Dejan Giroux, the guy who was the point guard and the tone setter defensively, AAC Defensive Player of the Year for the only Final Four team we've had since Phi Slam Jamma, and to have a guy that is now better than those 2 guys, that is crazy.
It's amazing.
Like, if you after like Deke graduated, it's like, oh yeah, no, I think Jamal Shed's gonna like do better. It's like, well, I like Jamal Shed, but let's put things in perspective.
Yeah,
Here.
let's pump the brakes here.
100% has been that.
Yeah, it's been amazing.
Yeah. And again, I want to say this team's defense isn't all Jamal Shed. Defense is always a team effort.
Absolutely.
Can't ignore the contributions of guys like Sharp, Cryer, Malik Wilson, but man, excuse me. Must be fun to edit. I mean, Shed was so active. He got his hands on so many balls. Was making the Cyclone guards miserable for long stretches of this game. I can't believe we haven't talked more about Emmanuel Sharp here. I mean, he had kind of a rough January. Ironically enough, his last really good game, I think probably before the Saturday game against the Longhorns, was the last Iowa State game. Like, he probably played a major part in keeping this team even in the game up in Ames. But I think he's gradually getting back to his old self. Had that strong game over the weekend against the Horns, and had one more steal than Shed. He had 4 steals on Monday night. That was one of those box score surprises from, when I watched the game live to when I actually looked at it after that in between recording this show. I mean, slight differences this one. I would say, again, the game up in Ames was maybe a little bit more competitive than this one. Like the last 2 minutes or so, there was some chance U of H was going to win, whereas last 2 minutes of this one, ISU was already kind of resorting to the fouling to extend the game. But if you love college basketball, man, this game was a treat, even if you weren't a Houston or Iowa State fan. You had 2 clearly top 10 teams playing a game with conference championship implications. high level defense, high level shot making. If you would have preferred a game in the 80s or 90s, you're just telling yourself that you like offense more than the actual sport. And like you said, just really awesome that it wasn't just a, oh, okay, the Longhorns in the schedule thing. Like this crowd was absolutely as in their seats and engaged. And to have our friend Dustin texting us that, yeah, everyone's in their seats 10 minutes before tip off. Cause that was one of the things that I really noticed when I was at Fog Allen, Bobby, was that it was about quarter till it was, I think it was a 3 p.m. tip. Like it was quarter to 3 and basically my entire row was full. The entire every row of my section was full. Like you would have to like really look around to see any open spots in the arena. And just thinking to myself, I like our fan base. Our fan base has definitely got more into basketball, but like wish I could expect that from us, that we're doing that kind of stuff now. That's really cool. And it's just a regular season game, but that's really awesome. Like you said at the top, that you and I were fans of this program during the Hoffines era. And not that I don't have many great memories watching Tom Pender's era basketball with you. Not so many watching James Dickey though. I think you were present at the New Year's Eve UConn win, right?
Yes, I was.
Was that you and
It
friend of the
was
show
me.
Ben?
It was yeah, it was me, Dustin, Ben. Were you there? You weren't there,
I
right?
no, I was there. I'm trying to remember if
Yeah,
my
yeah,
ex was
because I
there.
remember
Maybe my
I
ex.
remember I remember I just remember that us jokingly like how much money can we get together
Yeah,
to take UConn
because we were
not
UConn
money
was only
line,
like
not money line. They were only like 4 point favorites, and we were like,
yeah
that's the dumbest line ever. And then we won, and we were like, good thing we didn't take all of our money and put it on UConn -4 or
yeah
whatever it
right
was.
right as poor early 20 somethings probably was a good decision not to have jumped in there. But you know what I mean, like we still had fun with that era of basketball to
Yep.
but like now to have this one, it's just it's incredible. And there's still season left. And I'm not trying to make the be all end all regular season win, but certainly I think, and you and I think do this, Dustin, the absentia as well. Like stop and appreciate this, Cougar fans. Like it
Yep.
wasn't always like this. It might not always be like this. Like this will still be a good program, I think, for the foreseeable future. But to be the number 2 and beating the number 6 like that, don't take seasons like this for granted, even from a very good program.
Yep. Absolutely.
And good thing the Cougars won this because coming up Saturday at 11 a.m. in Waco, Bobby, is one of the very toughest road tests the Cougs will see in Big 12 play in the form of the Baylor Bears in your one of your hometowns there at the beautiful new Foster Pavilion, a arena that definitely has a normal camera angle. It
Yep.
doesn't give you
Everything's fine.
nosebleeds if you watch it in HD. I mean, I will say it looks like a much better because I've watched a game at the Farrell Center. It does look like a much better design. It's not just the old like domed arena, but if you want to talk shit about Foster Pavilion, I invite you to go ahead.
Oh no, one of the funniest things I saw about it, and I think I told this joke on a previous episode, but everyone said, or the best tweet I saw about it was, everyone in Waco is moving into barn dominiums, including Waco basketball or including Baylor basketball. I thought that was hilarious. I was like, that's good. That's good content there. So, no, I've been to many a Baylor game in their old stadium. I appreciate the Farrell Center for what it is. But yeah, they probably needed a new arena. I went to a volleyball game. I went to the U of H Baylor volleyball game, and it's definitely showing its age.
Yeah, I was gonna say Dustin, and former Houston Chronicle Texans bureau John McClain watched a Iowa State Baylor game. I want to say 2014, an Iowa State Baylor game there, and not a bad arena, but definitely one that was
Yeah,
starting
on
to
its way
show the
out.
years a bit. And considering it's a men's and women's programs that have won a national title, it's like all right, like maybe give them
Y'all deserve it.
slightly nicer digs. Zooming into the current year's team, though, I would say what scares me is a lot of similarities to the Kansas team that really ate the Cougs lunch up in Lawrence. They have a lot of size, 4 rotation guys who are listed 6'8" or taller, a lot of high level shot making. They're number 3 in the country in 3-point field goal percentage, top 10 in effective field goal. And I think maybe the scariest thing for me, they're one of the best teams at getting the free throw line. I mean, the Cougs are going to play physical. The Cougs are going to, I think, especially at opposing arenas, maybe playing a bit of a deficit in terms of the foul, the free throw margin, the fouls, all that stuff, maybe potentially having to deal with guys being in foul trouble. And looking at their roster, really good combination of, they have the high end one and done guys, Jacoby Walter and Yves Misi, proven vets also though, Jalen Bridges, Ray J. Dennis, and Jaden Nunn. A couple guys also, Dennis and Nunn, that transferred up from smaller conference schools who look very much like Big 12 level guys. I just wanted to zoom in on the two freshmen that I mentioned for a second. Walter is a big guard, originally from Duncanville. I believe has flashed really high level scoring ability. Should be a lottery pick. Not an efficient shooter, but I think one, that kind of comes to the territory of most freshmen who are being asked to do a lot in the offense. And two, he's so good at getting the free throw line and making those that it almost doesn't matter that he doesn't shoot a great percentage on paper. And the other guy, Misi, an overseas kid who is a super high level recruit out of Prolific Prep, one of the big basketball factories in California, legit 7-footer with a well-developed offensive game in the post. I guess at the NBA level, maybe will be a bit of a project, but at this level, more than good enough. Really efficient scorer, is going to have a size advantage on any Cougar big man he goes against. So I think stopping those two guys, not to mention the trio of veterans I just mentioned, I think is going to be key. Baylor has an X factor guy, Langston Love, who missed the 3 games prior to the Bears Tuesday night loss at BYU, only played 14 minutes in that one. If he can provide something close to his usual season stuff in terms of being a good big shooting guard off the bench, hate to sound pessimistic about this one, Bobby, but it's going to be a hard one regardless. But if Langston Love is out there and contributing along with all the guys I mentioned, it's going to be really hard for the Cougs to win this one in Waco.
Yeah, I feel much more comfortable with this game if it wasn't in Waco. Just a side note, I looked up tickets because I was like, hey, I had a lot of work and everything this past week. The office, we get a flex day if we work on President's Day, which I had to. So I was like, maybe I'll take Saturday off and do the drive to Waco. Tickets are like $400 on the resale market right now.
Good God.
It's insane. I love the fact Dustin and I were actually laughing about this because he was like, any chance you're going to go to the Baylor game? And I like kind of saw his text and I was like, oh, I'll respond to that here in a minute. Cause I was in the middle of something. And my response was going to be, I would love to, but last I checked a month ago, tickets were $200. And, about 3 minutes later, I get a text from him and he goes, I just saw tickets are like $300. I think that answers our question. And I was like, yeah. And so I decided to relook today. Yeah. They're up to like $4.
Oh,
and it's great supporting a team that's number 2 in the country. It also sucks supporting a team that's number 2 in the country. If you want to go watch them somewhere.
That is, and I had to wait until just couldn't pull the nickels and dimes together to do the Kansas game until like January to like get my ticket.
Yeah.
Well, that's over $100 more than what I paid for a game at Fog Allen.
Yeah, and here's my other thing is like right now the Cougs are projected in most brackets you see to be a 1 seed in the Dallas region. Well, if I'm going to do I'll spend $300-$400 to go watch us in a Sweet 16 or an Elite 8. It's not guaranteed, but I'd rather do that. So that's just me. But anyways, this game, I think I'm a little bit more confident about it than you are. This is a classic. A 1-point win on the road in conference is exactly what you're looking for, right? I'll be happy with that. But I do have a little bit of confidence just kind of looking at the stats and things like that. Baylor's not the best team on the boards. That could be a huge advantage for the Cougs, right? When you kind of look at everything and you just kind of look at raw numbers, rankings in the country, like Baylor's outside the top 200 in terms of rebounds per game. I think that's a huge advantage for us. They're also 85th in adjusted defense. While we're not exactly an offensive, powerhouse, I do think that we have a better offense than a lot of times we get credit for, or that we even us as the podcast even acknowledge. We're a solid offensive team.
Quick hot take.
Yep.
I think that's more about just the fact that we play, West Virginia and Oklahoma State accepted, that we've been playing nothing but like really good to extremely good defenses for like the last almost 2 months.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think seeing their adjusted defensive numbers really gave me some confidence in this game. Like you said, Baylor could absolutely put the ball in the bucket, and this is going to be a really fun strength on strength kind of matchup, right? You got Baylor's really good offense versus our really good defense. Their so-so offense, or their so-so defense, top 100 defense versus our like top 25 offense. It's going to be an interesting matchup. One that I would, be excited for us to win even by one. If this was at home, I'd have a lot more confidence than I do. Like you said, Missy is going to be, well, his stats don't necessarily jump off the page at you, right? I do get concerned when I see a 7-footer versus us. Not that we're criminally undersized or anything like that, but we've seen big men against this team can do damage against this, especially big men who can pass. If you're a big man who can pass, they can do damage against this, against this defense. So you kind of want to look out for that. And then, he's also averaging 1.6 blocks a game. So is the dribble drive going to be as effective when you have a guy who can completely alter shots and do things like that on the defensive side?
Yeah, as I said, Misi, like his consistency is really what like stood out to me. Again, freshman, not necessarily something you see that from all the time. Is why the guy is going to be a first round pick along with Walter, if not a lottery pick, come this summer in the NBA. And I think you touched on it well. That's Baylor's weakness. They are an elite offensive team and kind of meh defensively, which can be kind of papered over by the fact that you are extremely good as an offensive team. And just like they're not really a great team at turning opponents over. They also turn the ball over themselves in the offensive end a pretty good amount for a team that is otherwise extremely good there. And so that's something to watch. This isn't Iowa State, a team that is even better than the Cougs at turning opponents over and really made us miserable in that regard in the first game up in Ames. Yeah, like you, I'd feel if this was in Houston, I'd feel pretty good about the Cougs winning. You'd hear a lot more positive tone from me. And not to criticize the Big 12 schedule makers, because I like that we got Kansas twice. I like that we got the Longhorns twice. It's hard to do a full league schedule. I hate that we didn't get this game in Houston. Hate that we didn't get Baylor. I mean, I wouldn't trade a second game against Baylor, TCU, or Tech for that second game against the Longhorns and getting that season sweep, but would have loved to have this one in Houston. I think that offensive strength versus defensive strength matchup would have been a fun one to get at the Fertitta Center, but alas, I guess we'll have to sell for it. Foster Pavilion.
And here's the other thing though. That's the exciting thing about joining the Big 12, right? Is we have always said we just want to play teams that are in our area. And at some point you're going to run out of that a little bit. You're going to have to play K-State twice. You're going to have to do some of that because they're also in the conference. But like, man, we get Texas, we got Texas at home. We get to play Baylor, right? TCU twice. Like, it's just really exciting no matter what. You're right, though. I would like to see this game, but I wouldn't trade many of our home games for a game at home with Baylor.
No doubt.
There's too many riches, man. It's too rich of a conference, when you go from playing like, and it'd be really fun to play SMU twice instead of East Carolina, and then you get to go, oh man, we got to play Baylor only once. Dang it. It just, you set the expectations a little bit.
Champagne problems, to be sure.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll keep this one brief. Tuesday, the Cougs will also return to Houston to have their second and final regular season game against Cincinnati Bearcats. Not a lot new to learn about Cincy. They're playing tonight against Oklahoma State. They were down. Not much new to learn about Cincy. They're playing tonight against Oklahoma State. They were actually down at halftime. For their sake, absolutely has to be a win to even stay on the tournament bubble. They are currently down, or they're up 3, excuse me, with just under 6 minutes left in the basketball game. Right now, a team that's just on the wrong side of the bubble, but the beauty of the Big 12 is you always have opportunities against good opponents. If Cincy can avoid a bad loss tonight and take 2 of 3 again, their remaining road games against U of H, TCU, and Oklahoma, then they could absolutely play their way back into the field of 68. Easier said than done, but I think unlike the AAC, where your opportunities were fewer and farther between, there's at least a path for the Bearcats. Really, the eye test from when we played them back at Cincy told me they're an NCAA team, but I also can't look at their resume right now and say they're a surefire postseason team. We'll remind you, Cougar fans, really good offensive rebounding team, top 25 also, and keeping opponents off the glass. Not a great shooting team. Really good defensively. If you'll remember, there were a couple really long offensive droughts the Cougs had when the two teams played up in Cincy, though not a team that's going to force a ton of turnovers the way maybe the Cougs or like Iowa State do. They have a lot of size, 3 starters, 6'11" or taller, but none of the 3 are really high usage offensive guys. Victor Locken, one of those guys, was at one point this season, but he's really struggled in Big 12 play, Cougs should win this one, but since he's still a good enough team that I won't take it for granted. And I don't know, Bobby, the teams that, even though you're on a big winning streak against Cincy, the teams that have gotten to play in Fertitta the last few years always concern me a bit more.
Yeah, with Cincy, you got a team, like you said, on the wrong side of the bubble, but absolutely on the bubble. A win versus U of H, I think probably, especially if they do it at Fertitta Center, I think may get them in the tournament or be that resume booster that they need, where they get to be the argument of, we're the best team left out, or we should be in Dayton at the minimum. So you got a team that's playing for a lot. Never take for granted a team that will that's fighting for their postseason life here.
No doubt. All right, Bobby, you ready to talk some baseball?
Let's do it, buddy.
First off, props to anyone who went out in person for some or all the weekend series. It sounds like it wasn't the nicest weather to be outside in Houston, at least for parts of last weekend. The Cougs went 3-0 against the Binghamton Bearcats. Cougs didn't get off to the best start in their opener on Friday. We're first on the board thanks to a Jake Reynes leadoff triple, but Binghamton got a couple runs in the next frame. Didn't really have any hard hit balls off of Cougs starter Jackson Jelkin, but it's baseball sometimes. I really think the only pitch Jelkin will want back from his opening U of H stars, a solo homer he gave to Nick Rosselli in the third. Pretty no doubter on that one. But credit to the Cougs, they didn't let that 3-1 deficit change their approach, took advantage of some sloppy Binghamton fielding. The broadcast noted, not surprisingly, Binghamton has not been able to go outside and do a lot of practicing in upstate New York at this time of year. And it really did kind of show on some of the stuff they misplay, which, given them the credit as Division I baseball players, I would imagine is going to be something they would misplay later in the season. Jelkin was only able to go 4 innings. It wasn't the most efficient start, but did strike out 7 with no walks. Chris Stewart, UT transfer, had 2 effective scoreless innings in relief of Jelkin, ultimately got the win. Cougs were able to truly put the game on ice in the 7th inning with RBI singles from Alex Lopez and Cam Nickens. It was really cool to see Justin Murray back in the mound, also strike out the side to end the game. So not a perfect opener, but the Cougs ultimately won that one pretty comfortably. Had really nice Cougar debuts from Trey Jones, Harold Collin, Jake Reynes, and didn't start the season with a loss to Binghamton, Bobby. It's always good.
Yeah, I mean, would you like to see Jelkin be a little bit more, go a little deeper in the game? Yeah, it's also the first game of the year, so maybe arms aren't 100% where they're going to be. It really feels like this coaching staff is really focusing on Big 12 play. We may talk about this as we get deeper into the weekend, but lineups seem to be a little bit different. It still looks like this coaching staff is experimenting a little bit, maybe holding Jelkin back just a little bit. I don't want to say that he was clearly on a pitch count, but 75 pitches exactly is how many he threw. That feels like a number where they said, once he hits 75, let's get him out of there. Or the batter he hit 75 on, after that batter, he's done. It just kind of had that feeling to me, just kind of watching it. He really, as you said, he started off a little slow, one bad pitch. But me, you, Dustin, we were texting about it and how, you're not super happy to watch your Friday guy give up 3, but they were very much seeing eye singles and little bloop shots. And outside of the home run, he just didn't seem to be getting very hard. There is a difference between some weak shots that find holes versus just absolute ropes that are being caught. I'd rather see my pitcher giving up some little bloops, some weak grounders that are finding holes than just getting absolutely crushed and it's just finding a fielder's glove. So while that's great when that does happen, if you actually kind of look at it a little bit more, Jelkin pitched really well. We said one of the things we wanted to see is more strikes, just throwing more strikes. 0 walks, 7 strikeouts from your Friday guy. I will take that every single game.
And something we'll talk about also, 0 walks too.
Yeah, 0 walks. 0 walks, 7 strikeouts. I'm in.
Yep. Yeah, you saw Jelkin in all the stars. No one went deeper than 5 innings this weekend. So I think clearly building up arm strength on it. Not a new thing there. Saturday's another game that was probably closer than you would think, just based on the final score over the course of 9 innings. Though the Cougs ultimately left little doubt by the end. Antoine Jean, like Jelkin on Friday, Maybe in a perfect world would have been a bit more efficient. Maybe you got one more inning out of him, but flashed good swing and miss stuff. And other than a Binghamton leadoff triple that ended up getting home in the second, never really seemed like he was in danger out there. It was nice to also see the staff trust one of the returning guys. Grayson Drezik was more of a back of the bullpen guy last year to come on in relief and did get himself into a little trouble in the sixth, but didn't really give up any hard hit balls. And I think showed off what looks like improved swing and miss stuff to get out of that jam unscathed in the sixth inning. But I think the guy whose performance excited me the most from Saturday was the return of Jose Torrealba, who missed nearly all of last year hurt. I don't know if any pitcher other than Justin Murray was more dominant this weekend than Torrealba. Bobby had a 9-pitch eighth inning of work against Binghamton. You don't get a whole lot better than that. While this was still a 3-run game, had an almost equally easy ninth inning after the Cougs had kind of blown this one open to get the save because of when he came on. I would say probably the game where the Cougs took the most advantage of Binghamton pitchers struggling to hit the zone. South Carolina transfer Jonathan French in his Cougar debut also had 2 walks. Jake Reynes was the one I think who really blew this one open. Had a nice Oppo Taco home run to left field in the 7th inning, put the Cougs up multiple runs after Binghamton had cut the lead to 3-2 in the top half of the 7th inning. The Cougs terrorized them in the base path as well, going 4 or 5 as a team with Trey Jones having 2 stolen bases, comfortable 8-2 win. Can't take too much of an issue with that.
Yeah, I wish I had a bunch to add, but A2 wins are A2 wins. You don't look a gift horse in the mouth. Definitely showing the difference between a team that plays in the South versus upstate New York.
No doubt. I was gonna say I think I've been pretty not getting over my skis about this weekend, but Torrealba's 2 innings was really exciting. Like I think irrespective of who he's going against, like he looked like a guy who had all the confidence that he had at the end of the 2022 season, where he was, I would say, probably your best reliever. Sunday's late morning finale was probably the least dramatic of the weekend, though. Like the first couple of games, the Cougs pulled away in the later innings. You had your third different Cougar starting pitcher making his debut, Duncan Howard, probably the most effective of the 3 guys, though I think none of the 3 were bad, as you kind of said. Threw 5 scoreless innings, struck out 5, only allowed 1 base runner, Bobby, in his final 3 innings pitched. Don't hate that. Most of this game, the Cougars had 2-0 lead thanks to Justin Murray RBI hits in the first and third innings. The Cougs blew it open with 3 home runs in the 8th inning, a solo shot by Alex Lopez, and the first career home runs for Harold Call and freshman Ace Reese. If you want to pick nits, I don't love 14 strikeouts from your lineup against a team of Binghamton's caliber, but again, picking nits. And, you can only get so much overall from playing Binghamton, but you can only face who's in front of you. I think the Cougs passed all the tests in front of them. I mean, I just want to look at some of the better teams this weekend. I mean, just for comparison, LSU, the current number 2, defending national champs, played 4 games this weekend against a combination of VMI and Central Arkansas. And Bobby, I went and looked it up. Those teams were almost exactly the same profile-wise as Binghamton last season, all about kind of low 200s RPI teams. And LSU won 3 of those games by 3 runs or less. So,
yeah,
I'm not going to make any big, bold proclamations about UH's opening series, but I also wouldn't just dismiss the entire 3 games as not containing things that we could learn about this team.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why baseball series are series, right? One game is anything can happen in one baseball game. A bloop and a drive, isn't that the saying? And
Yep.
you're down 1-0 all of a sudden, and if their pitcher comes out and you're just not seeing the ball well or something like that happens, you can lose a game easily in baseball. Just from the third game, just a couple of things I noticed. Diego Luzardo pitches 1 inning, gets his 3 strikeouts. Not the most efficient in terms of pitches. That took him 16 pitches. Don't hate that. Don't love that, but also not terribly upset with it. But in that Sunday game, 0 walks, 11 strikeouts, 0 walks. That's what you got to do. Like, not to say, dumb it down to that, but any game where you can get 11 strikeouts and 0 walks, no matter who does it, if it takes you 6 pitchers to do it, that's fine. If that's what we're going to do, then that's what we're going to do. And I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, man, that's been this team's biggest bugaboo pitching wise is the free passes. And through 3 games, I think you demonstrated a pretty good job. And yeah, and Luzardo also first Division I appearance. Like, say what you will about a team from upstate New York, but these are all more grown men than anyone Diego Luzardo has faced in a game
on
that
scholarship
before. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, some of them.
It's based, but they're all on
not not
partial
not
scholarship
not
too.
scholarship limits notwithstanding.
No, yeah. Okay, so Cougar baseball beat Prairie View 27-1 on Tuesday night. Trying
Yes,
to
they
read too
did.
much into midweek results against way overmatched teams, but I mean, it's notable when you score more runs in a single game as a program than you have in like 30 years, right?
Yeah, yeah. We don't need to dive too deep into this. Uh,
No,
I
I
think there were a couple of eye-opening things. One, putting up 27. It doesn't matter who you're playing. 27 runs on 21 hits. That's amazing in and of itself. And we can talk all about that. But the most surprising thing from this game is the fact that they played full 9 innings.
I know, right?
What are we doing? I guess if you're Prairie View, it's not too far of a drive, I guess. So you're just
No,
like,
yeah.
let's get some guys some work, I guess. So like I guess, but man, what's the point of the run rule if we're not going to use it in this game?
I was gonna break out some of my favorite stats from the Cougs scored 9 runs before a PV pitcher got an out. 7 different U of H at bats ended in a hit by pitch, or plate appearances ended in a hit by pitch. U of H was up 17-0 after 3 innings, and Prairie View got their 1 run after U of H went up 27-0. And I mean, baseball's weird. It's not like football where you can stop passing, or basketball where you can go to clock killing mode when you're up by a bunch. I mean,
Right.
Todd Wing's not gonna go out there and tell guys to keep the bat on their shoulder until the game's over. I mean, and U of H did empty the bench. You had 17 guys make a plate appearance. 6 different pitchers saw action. All of them making their 2024 season debuts, including Kyle Calametto, who's working his way back from missing nearly all of last year hurt. So, and just gonna point out, Prairie View went 3-0 in their in the Astros HBCU season opening event at Minute Maid. So, I mean, decent chance they're one of the better SWAC teams. Not that SWAC baseball is that good, but not like we're beating this team 27-1 annually. And so, yeah, let's
Right.
stop talking about
Yeah.
that game there. But it was still, it's like,
Yep. That
okay,
was
like
fun.
I expect it to be like, okay, like, all right, 12-1, 14-1, whatever, like typical. And no, it was 17-0 by the third inning. It was 9-0. I was watching it while I was waiting to check out at the grocery store. I was just like, they have 9 runs before they've made it out. What is going on?
So the funny thing to me is like I wasn't watching the game. Like I didn't watch a preview game because I was doing something. I can't remember what. And
We'll forgive you.
and I get your text and it's just like I can't believe they're not stopping this after 7. And I was like, huh. I wonder what the score is. And I pulled it up and I was like, oh gee, because I was like, yeah, I'll watch like the 8th, 9th innings, just kind of watch us secure the win. And it was 27-0. And I was like, I'm not even gonna watch this. That's all right. I'll read the box score to see what
Exactly.
happened in this one.
Cougs being a bit tougher of a challenge this weekend from the St. John's Red Storm. They've only played 1 game this season due to what sounds like a crazy weather weekend in Florida, but the 1 game was a 9-5 win over a top 5 Florida team. So that's a pretty loud 1-0. They chased Florida's 2023 freshman All-American starter, Cade Fisher, after 2 innings and led 7-0 in the middle of the third in this one. Florida was able to cut the lead to 7-5, but St. John's did a good job keeping the Gators off the board for the rest of that one and adding a couple insurance runs late. I thought it was really notable. Their lineup drew 8 walks against Florida pitchers. I mean, there's no real nitpicking when it comes to a win over one of the SEC's best programs at their stadium. I will note St. John's pitchers only struck out 3 guys in 9 innings. And this was the team that D1 Baseball had projected 6 out of 8 in the Big East. And we're behind teams like Rice and A&M Corpus in the RPI last year. And I think the scariest thing about St. John's is that if these games are close late, like the game with Florida was, they have a much better bullpen than the team we just saw, and have a head-to-head win against an SEC team. Should expect Xavier Kohlhasser to be the Friday night guy against Jackson Jelkin. Was their projected Friday guy going into the season through 5 innings against Florida. Would guess we see Mario Pesca and Joe Massio for the other 2 weekend spots as well. We're going heavy on the Italian names here as well as you do with the Northeast team. So I think a series the Cougs can win. Can't really say a whole lot about teams 1-0, but I mean, I think a better opponent than the Binghamton team we just saw come through here.
Yeah, I think this is a game maybe that you kind of had chalked up as a early season Northeast 3-0.
We talked shit about them last week.
Yeah, and then they beat Florida, and you kind of we just said anything can happen in a in a baseball game. So one game, you don't want to take too much away from it. But if that one game's against the top 10 team, you can take a little bit from it.
No doubt. All right, Bob, you want to talk a little softball?
Let's do it, man.
No, I mean, not a ton to talk about. The Cougs went 6-0 this weekend. Exciting stuff there. Beat UTSA really comfortably, run ruled them in the opener on Thursday afternoon, a bit closer on Friday evening. Beat Nichols 5-1, shut out UMass the next day 5-0, run ruled Nichols again on the Saturday evening game, and then beat Northwestern State in both other Sunday head-to-heads, including a 13-0 run rule to end the weekend, which I thought was notable. Did it against Northwestern State's best starter. So I think that we consider that, because we talked about this last time, as the Cougs need to not lose one of these games. Like, these are not the better opponents in the schedule. This is not the part where you need to be dropping a game. And credit to the Cougs, other than that first game against Northwestern State, who I think probably the best team you're facing this weekend, whereas 8-7 on Sunday, really didn't ever leave much room for doubt. So you need to be 10-1 out of this weekend. You are 10-1. I would say not changing my large scale view of what the team is, but mission accomplished, kind of in the little picture of this past weekend.
Yeah, and if you really look at the if you look at the scores and kind of the statistics, it's a microcosm of what we thought this season was going to be. Cougs put up a bunch of runs, but even against some lower end competition like that, we still gave up 3 in softball is quite a bit, and when you're giving up 3 against the lower end, what's going to happen when you hit the Big 12 play? So the concerns haven't been eased, right? I'm still have the same concerns that I had going into it, but you needed to win these 6 and you won these 6. So
yeah. So coming up next, Cougs will get a bit more a challenge in the Tiger Classic in Baton Rouge against LSU, Austin P, and Boise State. LSU's gonna be a tough one. LSU is an undefeated 8-0, current number 7 team in the country, as I think I mentioned a second ago. Went 3-0 at the Clearwater Invitational this past weekend, including top 25 wins over Northwestern and Oklahoma State before the rest of that event got rained out. Bobby, they've scored 7 or more in all but one of their games this season, which is notable, given the Cougs are probably down a pitcher. Nicole Beaudue unfortunately got hurt during this past weekend's event. And I think a team that just generally we thought still has some questions to answer. In the circle, the Tigers are hitting for a 366 average as a team. This might be the most crazy stat for me, Bobby. I know strikeouts are less common in softball. Only striking out 14 times in 194 at-bats is crazy, especially when you've played like a pretty good level of a non-conference opponent so far. So that's going to be a tough one. Austin P shouldn't be too bad. They're 5-1, but haven't really played anyone of note. They were picked 4th out of 12 teams in the Atlantic Sun softball preseason coaches poll. Boise State kind of falls in the middle of the two opponents. They received a vote in the latest top 25 poll. They're 8-2 with some nice wins over Northwestern. They actually beat Arizona State and Tempe, so not going to be an easy one there either, though a bit more of a realistic possible win than LSU. I would be okay with a 2-3 weekend with that Boise State game being competitive. I'd be pretty stoked for a 3-2 weekend here.
yeah, if you can go 3-2 and you beat Boise, I think you gain a little bit of confidence. This Boise team is even though they only got 1 vote, they're still receiving votes. So they're not that I'm a softball.
When I say
receiving
vote, would I say receiving vote?
Yeah. No matter how you want to process that still puts them top 40. If you were really thinking about it, I mean, that's a tough game. That's a game that honestly preseason, I would say just even looking at what we've done so far, that I don't have a ton of confidence that we're going to win that game. But if you can pull that one off, that just means maybe this season is going to point in the right direction a little bit. Are we going to go out and run rule LSU or beat Oklahoma, something like that? No, the Boise game won't tell us that. But if you can keep it competitive versus Boise, maybe even pull out an upset. And to be honest with you, Sam, if we can avoid the run rule versus LSU, I would be pretty happy with that.
Yeah,
or not even close to the run rule,
either,
right?
yeah.
Right. If you lose 7-5, something like that, like, okay, cool. I can live with that. 7-2, I'm cool with that too. You put up some runs against a really good team. Okay. But if you go out and it's 14-0, then you get a little concerned, but I don't see this team getting shut out or anything like that. Versus LSU, keeping it within a run rule and playing the full game would be pretty exciting for me.
Yeah, I was gonna say a chance for your lineup who has put up some gaudy numbers against maybe not the best teams to, here's your shot. You got 3 games against varying degrees of high level opponent. If you can, even in a loss, if you can make some things happen with your bats in that one, I think you leave the weekend feeling pretty good and not just like okay, we like this lineup on paper, but a lot of what they've done is just against like outmatched teams to actually do it against like the LSU and Boise's of the world. I think be pretty exciting even if it ends up coming in some losses. So 2 more sports, I guess 3 more sports. We got both men's and women's golf to talk about here a little bit at the end. We got Cougar women's basketball, and we're going to start with a loss to the Longhorns exactly a week ago, last Valentine's Day. And believe it or not, Bobby, I don't have that much negative to say about that specific performance. I mean, wasn't a game we expected to really win, even in a reality where the season's going a lot better for this program. Layla Blair reached 1,500 points in her college career, tied for the game scoring high with 23. I thought showed herself admirably in this one. The Cougars were fairly competitive in the first quarter, only down 18-15, but as has often happened this year, as may or may not have happened a little bit earlier tonight against Iowa State, the higher ranked team pulled away in the second quarter. The Cougs never really got close for the rest of the contest. The Longhorns' awesome front court player, Madison Booker, tied with Layla Blair for the game high with 23 points on 9 of 13 shooting. As a team, the Longhorns shot a hair under 56% for the game, and after the first quarter, didn't shoot under 56% in any individual quarter. So didn't really expect this game to go differently. And I think Layla Blair should get her flowers from me and my co-host here for being a great player who stuck with U of H for 4 seasons and has represented the school well. But you can only say so many nice things about a double-digit loss.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, the joke we had that whole night, because my wife was working. You guys said that if we kept it within 12, because I felt like it would be closer than we probably expected. That if we kept it within 12, you guys were going to say something nice about me, and I texted you guys all night that we were on compliment watch, and unfortunately for me, it did not turn out. But first quarter down 3, cool. Third quarter you lost by 5, all right. Fourth quarter you won by 4. It's kind of like you can just, instead of playing 3 good quarters, if you can play 4, this team can be pretty good.
It's frustrating. Like, that was probably an effort that was good enough to win against some Big 12 opponents.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
I mean, just not a top 10 one. That's probably going to
Yep.
be the one that's ultimately winning the conference at the end of the season. We'll say we had a nice win in the middle there. The Cougs went on the road, got the program's first ever Big 12 win against the Oklahoma State Cowgirls. Quite happy to come back here and talk about a win that I was dead wrong about in my assessment of it when we previewed this game last episode. I mean, I think in the most positive way possible, Bobby, this game was kind of the reverse script of a lot of the previous losses, including the one we just talked about. I mean, usually it's been the Cougs hanging around for the first quarter, shooting and defending better than they would in the balance of the game. And then kind of by the late second, the Cougs inevitably would be trailing by a good amount of points. And Saturday up in Stillwater, the Cougs really did struggle at the start of this one. When it started the game in 11-2 hole against the Cowgirls, but there was kind of a similar point just inside of 4 minutes left in the second quarter where OSU got their lead back to 6. And I think it was really in a position to kind of extend it out to double digits, put this game away. And, it would have been insurmountable, but I don't know, kind of sends the Cougs back to the locker room in a here we go again headspace. Instead of that, Cougs gone an 8-2 run to tie the game. That was the first time in a Big 12 road game U of H wasn't trailing at the half. I mean, that had to feel good, right?
Oh yeah, no, that's you got to be excited if you're the Cougs, not trailing on the road in Stillwater.
Yeah, you have a positive third quarter, led by as much as 6 midway through, and the third quarter with a 1-possession lead. Still a good place to be. And I actually watched most of the second half of this one live. I was folding a big backlog of laundry my Saturday afternoon to, exciting stuff here. And I'll tell you, at the point, the point at which I became unreasonably confident this team would win this game was right at the beginning of the third quarter, or the fourth quarter, the first 2 possessions of the fourth quarter. Less than 10 seconds in, Malia Johnson nails a 3. OSU misses a shot. Very next possession, Nia Boyd grabs her initial miss, finds Layla Blair in the corner for a 3. Bam. Just like that, U of H has their biggest lead of the game. And there never really was a point where I feel like watching this one live, I sweated it too much. They got it down to 6 with just under 4 minutes left. U of H immediately responds with back-to-back buckets, and we had a nice stress-free final few minutes en route to the program's first ever Big 12 road win. I think a reminder of how good this team can be at times if it's not, really playing from behind like they've been previous games this year.
Yeah, it's always fun to win on the road in the Big 12. So really proud of the team for that effort. And like you said, there didn't seem to be much doubt as to the result of this game pretty late. So that's really exciting. That's kind of the first time I've really felt that way about this team in Big 12 play.
Real quick, Cougs are playing right now as we record against Iowa State at the Fertitta Center. And after the first quarter, Bobby, it's looking pretty good. You're down 18-17. Cougs actually led right before the first quarter. Unfortunately, I don't have any good news for this after that, buddy.
Yeah, I've had it pulled up and just kind of watching as it goes along. And
26-6 second quarter. What the fuck?
Yeah, that's not great, guys. That's not great. You're not gonna have fun getting outscored by 20 in one quarter. That's just
not for the first time this season, man. I hate that. I hate to say it. I hate to sound like I'm
the game flow tracker on ESPN is quite possibly, if your stocks look like this, you're changing stocks. Man. It's not good, man. But hey, we beat Oklahoma State. That was fun.
Yeah, Iowa State's a good team. Like I'm not trying to say though they should have won this one, but I mean, man, 26-6 second quarter.
After a quarter, you just get excited. You're just like, hey, we're in this game. We got this. And then you get outscored by 20 in the second quarter. And the Cougs have led in this game. So that one hurts. It hurts.
It does. Cougs will be playing this weekend at TCU against the Horned Frogs, second game of the season against TCU, who's had a pretty crazy run in Big 12 play. They had this kind of promising start to non-conference, not against the toughest schedule, but looked like maybe one of the more improved teams out there, and just had the most, I think, horrible injury disaster. They were already kind of short on players, it sounds like, from some existing injuries. They had to add 4 walk-ons so they could have something close to the normal amount of players. And
they forfeited a couple of games.
They did before that, and they had open tryouts of TCU.
3 of them are volleyball players. They're I picked up a basketball once.
I picked a couple of cool ones because, as you can hear, my voice is going and just don't have the time to do so. But one of them you kind of mentioned there, Bobby, 6'3" sophomore Sarah Sylvester, who's also TCU's top middle blocker, was an every match starter for the Horned Frogs during the fall. Also set the TCU program freshman records for blocks per set and hitting percentage. I thought it was really cool reading this ESPN story about this, Bobby. Her volleyball coach at TCU not only allowed this, obviously, but was like, this is really cool. I'm going to show up to your tryout for the basketball team and support you. So that was really cool. And one of the non-other TCU sport athletes I wanted to single out was Micaiah Moore, a sophomore who was previously a state championship winning girls basketball player in East Texas, actually went to TCU on a prestigious STEM scholarship. And I thought it was cool. She talked to her TCU advisor about the fact that, hey, my class is conflict with being a women's basketball player. And the advisor was like, you should probably do this once in a lifetime thing. And you can get these classes at a different semester, which I thought was cool. And not something you always see from people in that position. For the team, they have the regulars. They're still without their awesome post player, Sedona Prince, an Oregon transfer, and point guard Jaden Owens, who suffered her season-ending injury when the Cougs played last time. Madison Connor, their leading scorer, did return this past week against Cincy, a win for TCU and a big boost for that team. The Frogs got back Sydney Harris, a guard forward tweener in January, who's been kind of their leading scorer as of late. As you'd expect, they kind of struggled without a bench of mostly scholarship players, but they did beat UCF in their first game back in January, and they hung within single digits of a good Kansas team, and they beat Cincy on the road this past weekend. So not wildly optimistic about the Cougs getting a road win here, but also probably still one of your more winnable chances for the remainder of the season.
Yeah, and hopefully I will be at the game if something doesn't come up and cheering on the Cougs. It's probably one of our last chances to get a win this season, at least before the conference tournament. So here's to the Lady Cougs. Let's end on a good note here.
No doubt. All right, Bobby, why don't you take us home with some golf talk?
All right. I won't take up too much time with golf talk. There wasn't a ton that happened. Cougs played in the male Cougars. Men's golf played in the Border Olympics. You may recall last year, De La Fuente won this tournament. The Cougs did really well in it. In this one, they tied for fifth at 12 under. The leader was Illinois State at minus 32. Illinois State had the first, second, 12th, and then two 52nd place golfers. Their top two guys went 17 under and 12 under. Just an insane stat there. 17 under, won the tournament 5 strokes against his teammate. His teammate beat Reggie Joe, I believe that's how you say it, from Rice by 2. So he beat the next best, the winner beat the next best player from a different school by 7. Just an absolutely insane number. Not to just focus on Illinois State there for a second, but the Cougs tied for fifth. Had a respectable showing. Last year, De La Fuente, like I said, won this tournament. He actually did not participate this year because he will be playing in the PGA Tour event down in Mexico this week. So pretty cool thing there. After he won the Latin American Amateur Championship, he got to get the invite to the Mexican Open. So super, super exciting. That's why he wasn't there. Super exciting for him. Back to the guys who participated. Austin Riley went out, shot 8 under. Placed 5th in the tournament. Chi Chun Chin, 4 under, placed 15th. Actually was sitting pretty after 2 rounds. Went 2 over in his 3rd round, kind of dropped him 11 places. And then Grant Doggett came in 44th place with a 4 over. Wolfgang Glow came with a 2 over, placed 39th. So overall, an all right tournament for the Cougs. You beat the teams you probably should have beat. You would have liked to have seen it a little closer to the top, maybe 14, 15 under. But the one bad round is is kind of the bugaboo for the Cougs. For example, Austin Riley goes 4 under, 3 over, 7 under. If you fix that 3 over to a 2 under or to an even, you save 3 strokes there. You are much closer to that second place, to that tied for second at 16 under. So maybe it doesn't get you there, but you take these over par rounds, you turn them to even, right? Grant Doggett goes 6 over in his first round and then goes even in 2 under. Maybe you turn that 6 over into a 3 over or 2 over. Just those little things will hopefully we see develop from the Cougs, but that's kind of the bugaboo, and that's what makes golf the most frustrating sport that I've ever played. So
I was just gonna say real quick, I don't think,
go ahead.
If that the Border Olympics was usually a pretty good event without Santiago de la Fuente, like not perfect, but not bad either. Like you probably obviously do better if you add him to your 5.
Yeah, absolutely. You add him to your 5, and is he gonna take you up to where Illinois State was? Probably not, but you're definitely closer to second place than you are a team like ULM or Troy. So nothing to be worried about with this, especially considering you do have De La Fuente kind of out for this tournament. Your top guys, Austin Riley's going to be a top guy this year, goes out, finishes top 5, goes 8 under. And just like I said with the baseball team, seems like we're playing a little bit with the roster of who's going to actually be playing the 5, and the coaches are certainly trying to figure that out still. So don't jump off the Cougar bandwagon when it comes to men's golf if you were on it. Really should be fun to watch them in their conference tournaments and the other tournaments they are participating in. And then for women's golf, they had the week off. I don't know if we talked last week about the Nexus Collegiate. Cougs finished 6th in that. They gained 2 places from day 1. They were really kind of struggling with some of the rounds and consistency from some of the players. I won't go too deep into those results since they are a week old now, but upcoming is the Chevron Collegiate, which is hosted by the Cougs. It will be at the Golf Club of Houston. and it is free admission for anybody who wants to go. So Monday and Tuesday next week, I highly recommend just go check it out. If you're in the area, you work in Humble or something like that, or you live in Humble, just go. They're fun. You get to go walk around the golf club of Houston. The Cougs, as you can assume, golf teams never get the support that basketball or anything like that does because they don't play at home all the time. So yeah, go check it out. It's a fun trip. I'm sure you'd have a good time creating a little bit of a home field advantage for the Lady Cougs.
They'd really appreciate it. I know
Yeah,
that.
yeah. It's
You'd be
the
supporting.
two tournaments I've been, they've been super appreciative that I've been there for it.
Yeah, you'd be supporting one of the best teams in this athletic department, and also, just pound for pound, your presence there like does a whole lot, which I always think is really cool. That's why I'm going to be trying to be there in a couple of weeks when they play out here in Vegas.
Yeah, yeah. It's a fun time. It's free, so go out there, get a nice walk in, if nothing else. It's probably going to be nice weather down in Houston. Not that I've really checked their weather, but yeah, it's worth your time. It's definitely worth your time.
All right, so before I get into another coughing fit or lose my voice any further, I will just here at the end say we love and appreciate every one of y'all that support us financially. Patreon.com/SH Podcast. We do appreciate those of you that listen to us every week, even if you are not a patron. If you haven't done so already, please don't hesitate to give us a review in your podcasting app of choice. I will dust off Dustin's joke here. It is free 99 to do so, to give us 5 stars wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow us on Twitter at SHPAWDcast. If you like something or don't like something, or want us to talk about something we're not talking about, at shpodcast@gmail.com. I think I covered it all, Bobby. Really appreciate
Blue
those.
Sky, you forgot about Blue Sky, buddy.
Podcast.bsky.
I got my follow back earlier this week. I got my follow back. So
look at you, keeping me honest, making sure I mentioned the Blue Sky. I'm sure somewhere, Dustin, there's like a solitary tear of joy like going down his face that you kept me honest there at the end. So we'll take us out here. What do we always say at the end, Bobby?
Go Cougs.